Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something pretty profound, a question that's been around forever, really.
Mm-hmm.
How do we connect or try to connect with, well, what's beyond our usual reality?
Right, and we're digging into a specific text for this in the Domains of Mediumship. This is the one by the spirit André Luiz, psychographed by Francisco Cândido Xavier.
Exactly. So think of this as our kind of guided tour. We're exploring a spiritual perspective on mediumship, drawing from all these experiences and ideas packed into the book.
Yeah, and our mission, if you like, is to really unpack what this text says. What is mediumship according to this view? How does it show up? What are the mechanics behind it?
And what's really striking about this source, I think, is that it claims to be an insider's view, like from the spiritual side of things.
It's not your typical lab study or religious doctrine. It's presented more as a practical guide to how these interactions between, our world and the spirit world happen.
Right. It describes a whole range of stuff from someone speaking for a spirit to like the energy involved in physical effects. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. What's the basic idea of mediumship laid out here?
Well, the text kind of sets the stage by saying mediumship is a really important, even suggestive topic right now. It talks about humanity moving towards an era of the spirit.
An era of the spirit. Okay.
Yeah, implying that understanding these connections is becoming, more crucial.
Okay.
And it offers this understanding through what it calls the cosmic religion of love and wisdom. Basically, universal principles. Compassion, knowledge.
So it's not framing it as something weird or fringe, but almost fundamental for where we're headed.
Exactly. And it pushes that even further. It says mediumship isn't some super rare talent only a few people have.
Oh.
No, it's presented as something everyone has, an inherent faculty. Like breathing is the analogy used.
Like breathing. Wow.
We're all apparently constantly taking in and sending out energies, tuning into higher or lower forces depending on our own state, our own thoughts and feelings.
So it's like we're all radios constantly broadcasting and receiving. Yeah. And higher forces, or maybe like frequencies of love and wisdom, give you peace, inspiration.
That's a great way to think about it. And the lower forces would be like, static, negativity, leading to maybe anxiety, discord, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And because we're always interacting with these frequencies, the book really stresses the need for vigilance and prayer. Basically making a conscious effort to tune into the good stuff.
Right, and shield yourself from the static.
Pretty much. Protect yourself from negative influences.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. If we're all receivers, you got to be careful what channel you're on. How do these spiritual helpers, as the book describes them, figure all this out? How do they know how to help?
This is where it gets really interesting. They talk about something called the psychoscope.
Psychoscope, like a telescope for the psyche.
Sort of. But it's not a physical device. It's described as a spiritual ability to, analyze someone's inner life, their potential, or even a whole group's, by looking at their energetic radiation.
Their vibes, basically, but on a deeper level.
Exactly. It's not just seeing an aura, apparently. It's a dynamic assessment. What's going on inside? What's possible? It suggests our energy output is constantly being, read and understood spiritually.
Wow. Makes you think about the subtle signals we're sending out all the time.
Doesn't it? And how that might attract certain kinds of help or opportunities. These spiritual instructors use it to plan their work, understand challenges, figure out the best way to assist.
Like getting a spiritual weather forecast for a person or place.
That's a good way to put it. They give an example of using it in a spiritual center to understand the collective energy, the mood of the room, but much deeper.
Okay, fascinating. So universal mediumship, this psychoscope. Now let's get into the different types of mediumship described. The first one is conscious psychophony. What's the lowdown on that?
Okay, conscious psychophony. That's speaking mediumship. So a disincarnate spirit uses the medium's voice, their vocal cords.
Right.
But, and this is key, the medium is fully aware the whole time. They hear the spirit's thoughts. They know what's being said. They can even step in, monitor, or correct things if needed.
So no trance. They're not zoned out.
Not with this type, no. The example given is a medium named Eugenia and a spirit, Liborio. He's speaking through her, but she's totally conscious, even feeling his suffering, but maintaining her own self.
Like being a translator who also feels the speaker's emotions.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Aware and able to ensure accuracy. It sounds very controlled.
It does.
And the text says, for this to work well, the medium needs to keep their own vibratory rate, their energy level, higher than the spirit who's communicating.
Ah, like a protective buffer.
Exactly. So they aren't overwhelmed, especially if the spirit is distressed or carrying lower energies, like keeping your own signal strong against interference.
Gotcha. Okay, then what about somnambulic psychophony? That sounds deeper, more like a trance.
It involves a deeper shift, yes. Somnambulic, or somnambulistic speaking mediumship. Here, the medium detaches more profoundly from their physical senses, their conscious control.
So the spirit has more direct access.
It allows the spirit to express itself more spontaneously, yeah? Less filtering from the medium's conscious mind.
So the spirit's personality comes through more strongly, maybe?
Perhaps more directly, but it's still understood to be happening under the medium's overall spiritual influence and protection. The example is Selena and a spirit who seems quite disoriented. Selena's in a passive state. The communication feels raw. But Selena herself is described as a nurturing, grounding presence for that spirit. Her higher self is still kind of overseeing things.
So even when passive, the medium's own spiritual health and intention are still crucial shields.
Absolutely. And it mentions Selena also spontaneously experiences clairvoyance, seeing spiritual things and clairaudience hearing them, which suggests she's a very developed medium overall.
Okay. Now, physical effects. That sounds, well, dramatic. What's the book say about that? Ectoplasm and stuff.
Yeah, it goes there. It talks about ectoplasmic energy, described as a kind of vital fluid or energy that comes from incarnate people, especially mediums. And this energy can supposedly be used by disincarnate spirits to produce physical phenomena, like semi-materialization.
Semi-materialization, making themselves partly visible.
Or creating tangible effects, yeah.
Yeah.
The idea is like we have this biological energy reserve, and mediums or even groups can provide it, allowing spirits a temporary way to interact physically.
It's trying to bridge that gap between spirit and matter.
Exactly. Even if the how is beyond our current science. It mentions things like condensing fluids, maybe molding shapes briefly. The example of a spirit handprint in paraffin wax comes up.
Wow.
Even fleeting materializations of things like flowers. But big caveat, it stresses that harmony within the group is essential.
Why is that?
Negative vibes, arguments, fear. That stuff apparently disrupts the energy flow, makes the ectoplasm unstable or unavailable.
So group harmony is like setting the right lab conditions.
Good analogy. And the medium providing the energy is often called a maternal entity, like they're supplying the vital resources.
Providing the raw materials? Okay. And then there's psychography, automatic writing. How does that fit in?
Psychography is when a spirit guides the medium's hand to write. The book gives an example, not a positive one actually, of a young man writing under the influence of a less evolved spirit. It mentions a direct influence on his thought cells.
Thought cells. So it's not just a hand moving, it's influencing the mind too.
That's the perspective, yes. The spirit's thought connects with the medium's mental and physical processes to get the message down.
Okay, this all seems to hinge on mental energy, the power of thought. How does the book expand on that?
It uses an analogy. Spirit's mental energy flowing into a medium's psychic structure is like electricity flowing to a light bulb.
The spirit's thought is the current, the medium is the bulb.
Pretty much. And it really highlights the medium as a conduit. Does the book talk about how the quality of the conduit, the medium's own state, affects the light, the clarity?
Good question.
It does. It also talks about mental space, the idea that souls influence each other through mental agents, basically, thought forms, energetic projections of our minds.
Okay.
And here's the kicker. It connects this directly to everyday life. It suggests these kinds of mediumistic influences, this tuning in, happens all the time in ordinary situations based on our habitual thoughts and feelings, our mental tuning.
So our day-to-day thoughts and moods might be having spiritual ripple effects we don't even realize.
Yeah.
Shaping interactions on unseen levels.
Precisely. The power of thought is huge in this view. It can create, metaphorically, wings of angels, positive connections, inspiration, or chains of the condemned, negative entanglements, suffering. Our mental landscape matters.
Which brings us right to personal development.
Yeah.
If these abilities are innate but also potent, how does the book say someone should cultivate them responsibly?
Yeah, this is crucial. The source stresses that while mediumship might be a natural capacity, developing it well requires real dedication, self-education, learning, and especially selfless service, using it to help others.
It's not just about flipping a switch on.
Not at all. There are analogies. Fruit trees need care to bear good fruit. Raw wood needs a craftsman to become useful. A powerful car is useless without a road. Personal growth, ethical development. They're essential to channel these influences effectively and positively.
So it's less about just having the gift and more about building the character to use it well.
Exactly. And the text suggests that mediums who are genuinely trying, who are dedicated to service, receive support, guidance from spiritual friends, helpers. It's framed as a partnership, not servitude.
A partnership, I like that.
But it also warns that mediums are still human. They have free will. They can stray from the path through, carelessness, ego, or getting caught up with negative influences. Invigilance is the word used.
Right, that need for vigilance again. Now, the book also touches on mediumship around death, end-of-life situations. That seems like a really sensitive, powerful time.
It is. The text talks about moments of direct communion between souls, especially as someone is passing or has just passed.
Like telepathy.
It mentions monition phenomena, those sudden knowings or feelings we get about loved ones, and telepathic waves as interpretations of this direct soul connection. The example given is of Elisa, a grieving mother. Her passive state, her deep sorrow, unintentionally attracted her son who had passed away.
Attracted him? How?
Because his own inner turmoil, related to alcoholism in his life, resonated with her intense emotional state. Her grief acted like a kind of beacon for his troubled spirit.
Wow. So our strong emotions can create connections, even unconsciously.
That seems to be the implication, suggesting that some experiences we might dismiss could actually be these kinds of direct spiritual communions.
That's a lot to take in. What about the darker side, the challenges, the pitfalls the book warns about?
It definitely addresses those. It discusses things like possession, which sounds extreme, tormented somnambulism, and fascination. These usually involve interactions with, let's say, less evolved or sometimes intentionally harmful spirits.
Tormented somnambulism. Like the earlier example, but worse.
Yeah, the example is a medium channeling really hateful, archaic ideas, reflecting the controlling spirit's mindset. It shows the power a negative entity can wield.
Unsettling.
And fascination.
Described as more complex. A strong, almost hypnotic hold a spirit can get over someone, often rooted in past life issues or unresolved conflicts between them, like a deep psychic entanglement. It also mentions xenoglossia, a spirit speaking through the medium in a language the medium doesn't know at all, reflecting the spirit's own ingrained language habits.
Right.
And finally, it warns about tortured mediumship, where mediums get stuck in cycles with lower entities, creating this kind of unhealthy mutual dependence. It sounds like a real drain.
It certainly sounds like there's a heavy responsibility and definite vulnerability involved.
Absolutely. Which leads back to the core purpose presented in the book, spiritual assistance, helping those in need.
Helping spirits.
And helping the living understand and deal with these influences. It compares spiritual centers to hospitals, places for healing for those suffering, whether they're incarnate or discarnate. So it's a form of spiritual first aid or ongoing care.
That's the idea. Emphasizing love, respect, understanding those are the tools for helping suffering spirits. It uses a very moving example of a young man who died by suicide and his mother's immense grief, showing the complexity of intervention. It's not instant fixes.
It's gradual healing.
Yes, patient work. The key principles seem to be learn without getting discouraged and serve the good without burning yourself out.
Okay, listening to all this, it feels like mediumship, in this view, is way broader than just, talking to spirits in a dark room.
That's exactly the final point the book makes. It really widens the definition dramatically at the end.
How so?
It suggests that loads of everyday activities, farming, carpentry, art, sculpting, even cleaning, making judgments, anything where we channel energy, skill, intention to create or manifest something can be seen as a form of mediumship. We're acting as instruments for different energies, different intentions, different forces.
So a farmer channeling the energy to grow food, a carpenter channeling skill to build, that's mediumship too.
In this broad sense, yes. We are all instruments of the forces we align ourselves with, the things we dedicate our energy to. We produce results based on our inspirations, and we attract corresponding influences from, the unseen realms.
So we're all mediums, all the time, channeling something through our work, our actions, our focus.
According to this perspective, yes. It's a really expansive way to think about how we live and create and interact with the world, both seen and unseen.
Wow. Okay. This has definitely been a deep dive. We've journeyed through this really intricate spiritual view of mediumship, from its core ideas, the different ways it shows up.
The power of thought, the need for personal growth, the challenges, the connection to life and death.
And ending with this really broad idea of everyday mediumship. It's a lot to process.
And that central thread running through it all is this constant conversation, this interplay between our physical world and the spiritual realm. How connected we are and how much our thoughts and intentions shape that connection.
So a final thought for you listening. Maybe reflect on this broader idea. How are you channeling energy in your daily life? Through your work, your interactions, your focus. What forces are you aligning with? It really makes you think about intention, doesn't it? And aligning with those higher principles of love and wisdom mentioned earlier.
Definitely food for thought. And if this sparked your interest, digging into the actual book in the Domains of Mediumship would obviously offer much more detail.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.